Oh, we are live. I hit the button twice. All right, everyone. Welcome to Sex Explorers Podcast. How's it going,
Welcome.
Cami?
It's going so good. Welcome to all those who join us on Monday mornings.
Yes, bright and early Monday morning. This is the Q&A section of our seasons where we answer your questions and the questions that we get consistently or that seem to show up over the months that we work with our clients or people sending us messages, and the questions that you ask us live on the air. So feel free to add into those just by the comment section. Let us know if you want it to be anonymous so we don't put the banner across. But if you're cool with it just being a question to help everyone learn, put your name in there. Don't say anonymous, and we'll answer that question anyways.
Yes, we will.
Cami, tell me about how you how did your presentation, or not? It wasn't a presentation. It was an event. You had an event go on. How did that go?
It went good. So I've had a couple. So I did a 4-week training for other mental health professionals on sexual competency. And so I finished my first course in that. It offers 8 CEUs, and I'm going to run one in July and run another one in September. And then the Idaho Sexual Health Professionals Conference, that's this coming Friday, May 19th. Ooh. You can register at Idaho Sexual Health Professionals website, and it's providing medical continuing ed and mental health continuing ed credits. So it's a multidisciplinary conference.
Ooh, that's going to be fun. Fun.
What have you got going on?
Next Monday, it's a Generations Conference. Talk about 4D wheel and how to use that with sexual health and faith transition, like when someone is not where they started with any part of their faith, and how we can kind of try and merge both of those. So
I'm excited for you. Are you going to be able to record it and offer it to other people?
It's being recorded, and I know if you buy the Generation, so anywhere that you're at, you can join virtually, and mine is a virtual session as well. So we'll have people in as well, and they'll send out the handouts that I've got and things along those lines. So you can join up if you'd like to. If not, come see me there. I believe I have to remember the exact hour, but it's the 22nd of May, and I think it's at 2 p.m, and I go for an hour and a half down at the Saltaire, or the Great Saltaire.
Great. Yeah. May is so full every year, right?
So full. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I've got going, but that's been kind of the big one. I consistently do trainings at the Healing Group, and so I've got fathers or working with the partners of perinatal moms, not fathers, but partners of perinatal moms.
Oh, that's so great!
And I've got the Man Cave this Wednesday. Gosh, I've got quite the full week.
What's the Man Cave?
Man Cave is for new dads. Well, actually, dads of all ages. I've got people, or some dads in there that they have teenage kids, and their youngest is in their teens. And then I've got most of the dads in there are new fathers or just had babies, or within the first 5 years of their child's life. And it's a free group that the Healing Group puts on, and I run it. And big part is just to provide support to new dads, especially with partners that have perinatal anxiety, depression. Maybe they, as fathers, experience some mood changes, or they're just like, man, we don't know how we're going to engage in sex. How are we going to engage in these arguments? Or I try and do things this way, and she wants to do them that way. So
yeah, the addition of a baby is a change on the whole system, and the whole system needs support. I'm so glad to know the Healing Group is doing that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's online, so you can join from anywhere. It's not therapy, so across the nation, anyone can join. It's a free resource.
That's awesome. I'm noticing my camera is lagging. Is yours as well, or do you notice that?
I see you're lagging. I don't see mine lagging. Am I lagging on your end?
No. We'll see how that goes.
Well, you're coming crisp and on time, so I wouldn't worry about it.
All right.
Well, let's start into some of these questions. Does it sound like an okay place to go?
Yeah, let's start our Q&A episode.
All right, boom. First question. Hi, Braxton. I had a question about sexual shame. Do you think sexual shame is ever a good thing or only a bad thing? Would love to hear your thoughts. Oh, it's a good one. It is a good question to ask because I can totally see where this question is coming from of like, hey, what I'm imagining this question is asking is it okay to have sexual shame because might sexual shame keep me within certain values or boundaries that I want to have?
Mm.
That's how I'm conceptualizing it. Cami, how do you hear this question?
Yeah, I hear it saying, is it ever protective? Should I keep it around or try to eradicate it?
Mhm.
Yeah. Tell me what I think you said you wrote this person back. Do you
Yeah.
want to read
So
your response?
yeah. So some of the response I had is so first right off the bat where it says shame and guilt are used interchangeably a lot of the times, and which is I work to describe how shame and guilt are different, which is guilt is essentially I've done something that's against a value system or something that I don't want to. And I
Mhm.
can make changes. I can learn to do something different. I can make amends and change this aspect or choice. Whereas shame is this is just a proof of how flawed I am as a human. There's not change to be made. I'm just a flawed failure, bad person. Usually it really hits the individual, such as, until someone will find out that you're a bad person eventually. And
Mhm.
you better try and hide that versus, yeah, I didn't make a choice that maybe I wanted to, or I made this choice and I realized I want to make different ones. And I can make that
Mhm.
change. Shame and guilt get used interchangeably, but they are not the same.
Yeah.
So, with that being described, I was saying that a person being flawed or bad for their sexual desires or sexual engagements or urges, that I don't see that ever being a supportive thing. It doesn't leave any room for the person to change into the health that they would like to experience. So I defined that, and then I described to them if you're addressing guilt, which is why I kind of
Mhm.
thought the person was saying, hey, I kind of want to be able to change my value system or recognize where I'm not meeting those. I'd say I have certain values that govern my actions spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically. I have desires. I know they're okay. And if I cross personal boundaries, I know I can redirect them. And I'm an overall good person. That would be something I would want them to say to themselves. And know there's room for that person to be present and to alter their parts in their life and to address things that make them and support them in their sexual health to create their sexual health. And that can be a part of religious health, that can be a part of cultural health. But we have to take into consideration why we think a certain action is or is not healthy. And oftentimes it's influenced by social, religious, familial, uh,
Mhm.
and societal norms of what we think should be the way that we want to think. And so we have to be careful with those. What thoughts do you have, Kemi?
Yeah. Well, I'm a nerd, and so I wrote a few things down. I'm going to see if I can add it to the stream. Um,
Ooh.
because I pull out, I have this giant pillow and my clients will be like, yeah, she does. She has this giant pillow in my office. And I often will make sure we're using the right word for the right emotion. And like you said, is it shame that you're feeling? Is it guilt that you're feeling? Is it anxiety that you're feeling? Is it, you know, insecurity that you're feeling, and realizing that these are all really different, making sure that we're using the accurate emotion for our experience. And let's see, where are the site, characteristics of shame. I'm glad you hit this. Shame describes our feelings of inadequacy created by an internalized negative belief about oneself. So I can't think of an internalized negative belief about ourselves that is helpful. Um, Shame's an unpleasant, self conscious emotion associated with negative self evaluation, um, feelings of pain, exposure, distress. So I can't think of anything that is helpful.
Mm-mm.
But I can think that guilt can be helpful if we've broken an agreement we have with ourselves, or we've broken an agreement we have with our partner, and we feel bad. We know we made a mistake, that we broke an agreement. I think that kind of guilt is always helpful to make sure we're living a life that is driven by our intentional decisions. And I think that sexual shame specifically is that feeling that, sexual acts, feelings, or desires are bad or wrong. And they point out that we're not born with shame. It's not an internal feeling like our base, fear that is rooted inside of us. That's innate for all of us. Joy is innate in all of us. We come to this world with like 3 or 4 survival emotions that we've evolved to keep us safe. Shame is not one of them. Shame is something given to us by other people. I think that guilt can be innate based on our own values, but I don't think that shame can be innate. And when I work with people, I see 2 different kinds of sexual shame. One is they're ashamed that they are sexual, or ashamed about what gets them off, or what gets them aroused, or what they're interested in. But there's another kind of sexual shame, which maybe I see more because I'm a female therapist, which is shame that they're not sexual. Shame that's repressed for them, that it's hard to access, that they know they should be a better partner, should be a better wife, and they don't know how to get there because of all the repression that was offered to them. So there's 2 sides to this sexual coin. And sometimes I think with sexual shame, we stay on the one side of the coin, that I'm ashamed of what I find sexual. But there's another side to it, which is I've repressed my sexuality my whole life, and now I'm ashamed that I don't know who I am, or what I like, or what I want at all. And, it's causing issues in the relationship. So I'm just kind of a nerd. I had to throw it out there because I like language. And there's some causes of sexual shame specifically. The research has like 6 outlined: a traumatic past experience, physical or emotional abuse, messages received during childhood that were negative, feeling alone in our identity, religious affiliations that offer some shame about our sexuality, and being openly judged by others. So also, if you're saying, is any shame good? I'd say, well, are we describing it correctly? And which one of these 6 do you identify most with? And knowing that these all are external factors. None of these were internal or, natural. So I don't think that, shame sexually can be helpful. I think that guilt can be helpful because it can alert us to where we've broken our agreements with ourselves or with our partner.
Yes, because that is an internal process
Mm-hmm.
of what you want to experience as a human.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something you get to create for yourself. I continually go to the thought of when someone's attempting to make a life change. Life changes are hard, whether that be in diet or in exercise. Those are kind of the easier ones people have experienced on a certain level. And that also has a big split off of shame versus guilt, where there is like, well, what are my goals? What's my end goal here? Well, my end goal is around this time we're talking beach bodies, and that one can get riddled with shame because you're supposed to look a certain way. You're supposed to have a 6-pack abs, or you're supposed to have an hourglass body, or you're supposed to, like, these shoulds. Those are great ways to be able to filter out if there is a should involved in there. You're heavily steeping into shame, whereas guilt might be, well, what's an overall life experience I'd like to have? I want to be healthy, and if that involves this, my body can be very accepted. But I know that if I am, hammering a dozen donuts a day, it may be going against what my goals are, and we can have some guilt around that. Again, the shame is I am an unhealthy, whatever it may be. You can insert any of those unhealthy judgments for yourself. On the other side is going, oh, my stomach feels sick, and I ate all those, and that kind of doesn't go with what I want to do. I wonder where I can make some change to address that.
Yeah.
Same thing goes with sex within that. And I love the way that you put out all of those, that the more we can look at guilt being, this is what I'd like to experience, these are my agreements, versus I should want this, I shouldn't enjoy that, I should last blah, I should want all of those hit the sexual shame. And I haven't seen those make changes, or at least make lasting changes.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever seen it make lasting changes. Have you?
I don't think so. And I think one little like indicator we can use for, okay, am I experiencing shame or am I experiencing guilt, is people who have the capacity to work with their guilt are often motivated, highly responsible to make it right. Say, oh my gosh, I will make this right. And they can stay above board emotionally. They're regulated, they're centered, and they're motivated to correct the situation. When we're living in guilt, our only motivation is to hide, to run, to conceal. We're not motivated to be responsible to fix it. And so that's something you can say, like, is this guilt or is this shame? Is be like, what are you compelled to do? Oh, I want to hide. I want to never see this person again. Okay, that's probably shame. Guilt, I think, takes a more developed person actually to feel guilt, because it's motivated to fix it. And that takes confidence to be responsible. It takes confidence to say, I messed up and I want to make it right. And when we're in shame, we don't have that degree of confidence at all. We just want to hide.
Yep. We just want to hide. And I like when as you're talking about the experience of being who you are. I think a lot of times that people that come in, well, one of the things I'll correct on myself, that I haven't seen it be helpful. I have seen sexual shame be helpful to achieve a goal that someone wants, and there are typically detrimental outcomes that are unforeseen or unsure of, such as, I shouldn't masturbate, I shouldn't be a sexual person until I'm married. That is one I see all the time, which is, again, a part of a value system that comes from either society or a religion or within a family, and someone accomplishes it. I've met people, and I know people that have accomplished no sexual experiences, no masturbation, no sexual imagery, nothing. And then all of a sudden we have a turning point, and the detriment that has come up with following something like that is that we lived in the shame scenario, didn't really have anything, shut it all down. But then all of a sudden, wedding night, sex is okay, it's good, you should want it, and you should also want to. Now all of a sudden your should has switched. And that becomes detrimental. I've seen this for men and for women. And so be careful. As you heard me earlier, I was like, hey, it hasn't been helpful, or haven't seen people do it. I correct myself. I have seen people achieve completing sexual shame desires and being like, nope, I will never, I don't want this. And oftentimes there's a lot of internal loathing, or there is some form of action that we're waiting for that could be changed. And it makes it really hard to then switch from one extreme to the next.
So I hear you saying, sometimes people will use shame to accomplish a goal, but you're questioning whether the goal should be accomplished in and of itself. That it's not healthy. It's not a good goal. And you can use shame. You can beat yourself to the finish line, but was that a good finish line?
Well, I think of it as being, people that also, even, again, going back to diets, when we're talking about the shame side of things, I shouldn't eat donuts. Well, we start to really take things out. I'll never eat sugar. Great. But oftentimes what ends up happening, either in a crash diet or in something when someone's like, nope, I don't eat sugar, I don't eat this, eventually something will happen where there is a slip, or they do eat something with sugar and they're like, I've lost it, I did it all. And so then we see what we might either qualify as a binge of like, all right, I'm going to swing to the other side, or and then it continues its own cycle of, you can only be in this space of non-engagement, and look how bad you are when you let yourself go. It just it starts the shame cycle completely over and over again, whether it's eating or sex. So the goal is
so interesting, because so many of our interventions, whether it's for low desire, whether it's for rapid ejaculation, they all include this acceptance of where you're at and a non-judgmental non-judgmental mindfulness. Like all of our sex therapy treatments for things that we're ashamed about ourselves, whether low desire, rapid ejaculation, maybe some certain kinks or fetishes or orientation, all of the treatment models are a non-judgmental acceptance of where we're at and a loving kindness for something better. But shame is none of those. It's judgmental. It's not, you don't want to be aware and make friends with it. You want to push it away. So it's really rooted in aggression and hate and avoidance and pushing things away, where all of our treatments are the opposite. They're like, sit down, let's make friends with that part of you. Let's learn from it and then make some choices. So it might help you meet a goal, but Braxton and I would both be saying, we probably don't like this goal. It's probably not healthy in the long term.
Absolutely. Beautiful way to put that, Cami. Well, we could talk about in fact, maybe we got to talk about sexual shame in a full episode someday, but this is a great question to ask. Okay, so we've got next one. My 14-year-old may be sexually active. What are some books or resources to have accessible for me as a parent with a teen who seems reluctant to engage in conversations with us about sex? This is a great question, and it can be really difficult because as I work with teens, you have some that can't get enough information and they are asking all the questions, and you have others that are like, no, I don't want to talk to you at all. I'll figure this out on my own. This is awkward. I want to, and you'll experience it back away. What I ended up telling this person and encouraged them to look at was, let's see if I can do a share. I really like For Goodness Sex by Alvin.
I pulled it off my bookshelf because I was going to mention it, and I figured you were going to mention it.
Yes. Yes. Well, I won't share it then because that's what it looks like, that book. It's not a very expensive book. It looks like you can get a hardcover for $21 or you can get it on Kindle for $12. But it goes through, Al Vernacchio is an educator in Pennsylvania or Philadelphia. I always mix those two up, either the state or the city. But he's in that area of the United States, and actually gives in that book they've got questions from teenagers and how he might respond to it, plus a different model of how to address sexual conversations. I love it. What do you love about the book, Cami?
I love that it's really for teenagers. I think like a lot of my favorite resources about sex are geared toward younger kids, talking about, their body is changing. And so when parents are looking for information to talk to about sexuality with their teens, I think it's difficult to find resources. I think we've got a lot for younger kids, mostly around puberty, maturation, but not necessarily ones about how to talk to our teens about sex. And I think a lot of parents that I talk to are like, we don't want to do what our parents did, which was a lot of sexual shame. So we're going to do the opposite, which is nothing. We're not having any conversations. And that's not helpful either. So, I love For Goodness Sex by Al Vernacchio. I really love that he has like a living blog. So every time teens write in questions for him, he answers them on his blog too. So there's way more information actually on his website than there is in the book. But you should probably have it in your house if you've got teenagers or are going to have teenagers and would like to raise them with the idea of sexual health rather than sexual shame. And I even did just a consult with another therapist a couple weeks ago on this issue. Her teenager chick. I'm a therapist and I'm not sure what to say to my kids because I don't want to say what my parents said to me. And so with her, I started, and I was just looking for a slide, but I couldn't find it, with the 6 principles of sexual health. Of saying, okay, you don't want to give them what your parents gave you, but you're not sure what you can give them. You can always come back to the 6 principles of sexual health of, hey, if you're going to have sex, it has to be consensual. It needs to be non-exploitative. It needs to be focused on mutuality. It needs to be honest. You should demand that your partners are honest with you about their history and their expectations. You need to be engaging with people who will prevent unwanted pregnancy and STIs with you together. And you need to have, it's these 6 principles that we can offer that are research-based that say, hey, we know the World Health Organization did this study, and we know that if as a world, if we made this a public health initiative by following these things, we would prevent sexual trauma and sexual harm. And I think most value systems want people to avoid sexual trauma and sexual harm, but we're not sure how to do it. This is how to do it. This is what you can talk to your kids about so that you are value centered, but it is sex positive. It is not shaming. You may even say, hey, kids, I'd rather you not be sexual. But if you're going to, you absolutely need to have these expectations for yourself and your partners.
Yeah. I like the way that you're talking about 6 principles, as well as we're stepping into maybe an uncomfortable space where the teen might be like, no, I don't want to talk about, this is so embarrassing. And while consent is also an important part of this, it's also important to acknowledge why we're having the conversation. I don't want to have the conversation with you. Okay, I need you to know some information, and let's talk about who and where you're going to get this information from then. That can be a really helpful thing. Like, I don't want to talk to you, but I'm okay talking to a trusted adult. I'm okay taking a class. Just don't talk to me about it. Okay, well, I need to know what and how you're getting this information.
Because if you create a void, your teenagers will fill it. And then you won't get a say in what's, what kind of ideas that they're incorporating into their sexuality.
Absolutely. Another one that has been really cool, I've had referred to me from other trusted sex therapists, has been the OWLS program, which is this. You got a book too?
I've got all of them.
You're amazing.
I'm a nerd. This is the 7th to 9th grade one. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I love this.
I need to get mine with the teenagers then. That OWLS program, this is the one, like, you can go through here with the grades K through 1, 4, 6, all the way to adults and older adults. But if you click on young adults, this is what we're talking about, those 14-year-olds, our whole lives. And the main part that I think is really cool about this is this part right down here where it says sexuality and our faith. So a big part is that even though this is put on by the Unitarian Church of Christ, or Unitarian Universalist and United Church of Christ, it is for secular, and they have sections for those of the faith. So it is not that the faith is consistent throughout the entirety of it. It is an optional part that you can put in or out.
It says here is the secular foundation. Everybody this age should understand about sexuality. And if you'd like to add a faithful element, you can do. Here is some supportive information. It's like 7 books. It's one of my favorites too is the one for older adults, because navigating sex after 60 is difficult. And there's Our Whole Lives and OWLS program for older adults. So I love this program. Yeah. It's fantastic. It has lesson plans and things to do with the kids, as well as medically accurate information.
Yeah. So that would be one to put in, whether you're an educator or a parent and you're looking for information. This is where Alicia Worthington's All You Got to Be is One Chapter Ahead. This literally could put you 1 chapter ahead to talking to your kids.
Oh, Alicia, that's such a great idea.
Oh, it's beautiful. You don't have to know it all. Just be 1 chapter ahead and you can do this. So
I love her. Yeah.
I know, me too. She's awesome.
One other resource I use a lot, and I just did a podcast interview with Mama Dragons, is this book called The Pride Guide. And this is education for parents. It's called The Pride Guide, a guide to sexual and social health for LGBTQ youth. So that can throw a wrench in it too. If you're not sure how to handle things differently with a queer kiddo, of how are we going to navigate sexuality in this situation, I've really enjoyed that book. I recommend it a lot to parents with LGBTQ youth.
Gotcha. Great. I like that. And I think it is important, is that the LGBT youth, the conversations there are going to be similar and different in a lot of ways. All right, let's jump to another one. We've got, I'm in a throuple of gay men. So we have 3 gay men that are part of a consensual relationship. I've had painful sex in the past and ended up causing some long-term damage to my anus. I do enjoy anal sex from time to time, but I have to be really okay, and we have to go slow. My partners love to be topped, and so do I, but I can't be a bottom a lot. What can I do when I'm not available? So the terminology being used here is to be topped would be someone that is providing sexual pleasure to the other person with their penis, such as in this case, when they're talking anal sex, someone being topped is the one that is giving anal sex versus receiving anal sex. Being bottomed is someone that is receiving penile penetration. Is there other terms in there that I've missed? I don't think
so.
Okay. That's a good question, especially when we've had some long-term damage to the person's anus. That's a great question to ask. One of the things that comes up for me is, first off, talk with your doctor about what that long-term damage is. Because we're not medical professionals, it's really hard to say like, oh, you could just do this or this or this. I don't know what that damage is. It could be anywhere from fissures, which could be really, really problematic, to hemorrhoids.
Or prolapse.
Or prolapse, you're right. And then prolapse could be, and there's things that could be involved, and other ones I'm sure I'm not aware of, that I would highly encourage you to talk to your doctor about what sexual actions are on the table, what are absolutely off the table, and what things are on the table when you're feeling okay and when there's no pain involved. That's my first step. Any first steps for you, Cami?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that, I would talk to your, GP or your proctologist, but if they don't refer you to pelvic floor physical therapy, I would ask them to refer you to pelvic floor physical therapy. So pelvic floor physical therapy is not just for female, it's not just for postnatal care, that men have pelvic floor dysfunction also, and sex should not be painful. And so we've got to get the education needed and the flexibility needed to maintain an enjoyable sex life, despite these kind of realistic changes as we age, as we have concerns, and as our body isn't, really doing what we'd hoped it would do. But anal sex, we need a lot of education to do it well. And some people might not understand a male receiver of anal sex can be very pleasurable. Some people are like, I don't get it. And they don't understand that the prostate is stimulated through their anus and can create incredibly pleasurable orgasms. And the giver also receives enjoyment because of the environment. And so anal sex probably got some judgment around it, and maybe the lack of information about why men and women who are both straight and heterosexual some enjoy, anal sex. It's not an orientation behavior, but you have to go really slow. You have to use a ton of lube. So I'm wondering, I think some people, maybe if they believe that anal sex should go the way they see it in porn, need some education. Absolutely not. There needs to be some preparation. It needs to be really slow. You're going to need a ton of lube. There's a sphincter there. The anus is absolutely not analogous to the vagina at all. It's a completely different anatomy form, and it's going to need, it doesn't self-lubricate. It doesn't, the sphincter, you're going to have to be really careful that you don't damage that. So you're working with different anatomy, and you need to have a solid education about it. That's just from my initial impression.
Yeah, that would be, and I love the way that you bring in that this is not just if you receive anal sex, then that means that you're gay, or it means that you are this. Not at all.
No.
Pegging is involved with a lot of heterosexual men, women. Same thing goes with men who have sex with men that aren't necessarily identifying as gay. There's a lot to unpack in this. So this could be for anyone that's wanting to explore anal play but needs to avoid that pain. Work with pelvic floor therapist if there is, as well as the things that I also encourage on top of, say, a good silicone lube. I do encourage silicone lube in scenarios like this because of the longevity of the lubrication. If you
water-based is going to get sticky.
gonna get sticky. It's gonna go fast because that's what the rectum is supposed to do. That entire colon is supposed to soak up water.
But if you're using a condom, you can't use silicone lube.
That you can use silicone lube on a condom. You can't use oil-based. The oil-based is the one like baby oil and stuff. We gotta pull that up.
You're absolutely not going to want to use coconut oil or olive oil or anything like that.
Nothing like that. Let's see. I think I've got it here in the office.
Okay, water-based or silicone lube are always safe to use with any kind of condom. So you're going to want to really make sure. I have seen some combo lubes, and so you're not going to want to use those combination lubes. The hybrids. That's what I was thinking. I was like, those sneaky little hybrids, because they wanted to have the benefits of both silicone and water and oil. But so don't use a hybrid lube.
The other thing that's going to be, I'll keep going.
No, you're good.
I would say the other thing that's also hard to remember, because my next, for this person to answer their question, my next recommendation is if your partners want to be topped, if they want to experience penetrative sexual experience, and you are like, I don't know that I want to be topped, or I don't know that I want to top, then offering other options such as if you have a toy, or if you have a dildo, or if you have a vibrator that's insertable and safe so that you don't lose that inside of your partner. Make sure you got an ability to maintain a firm grip, or be able to have something that is wider that doesn't allow for it to be lost.
Yeah, because of that sphincter, anal toys need to be different than vaginal toys.
Yes, yes, they do. And so engaging in that, using lube is very important there. And you have to be really careful if you're using cheap silicone toys. If you start using a silicone lube, the silicone with cheap silicone can actually start to break it down. If not over time, if it's really cheap silicone, it'll start breaking down really quick. And it leads
you don't want little flakes of the toy left up internally. We're going to cause you some problems. Yeah.
No, or to have those little like minuscule bubbles that is holding on to fecal matter or things along those lines. So be careful. If you can, use like a solid plastic toy with the silicone lube, or if you're going to use a silicone with silicone, do a test location to see if anything comes off, to rub into that, to see if it makes it sticky at all. But also the safe one would be go with a high quality medical grade silicone if you're going to use
or glass. Glass is incredibly resistant to bacteria. So anal toys that are glass can be really protective.
Yes. Great idea. And then just go and it's a new thing because it's not your penis, it's not your part of your body, your pelvis. You'd be using your arms, or go slow and see if you can start to engage in the sensation that your partners want, exploring that. And if you are not in a place that you want to be able to receive, let's explore other pleasurable experiences for when there's pain or when you need to do something different.
Yeah. And I think, I operate from the philosophy that we're more alike than we're different, that men and women are more alike than we're different, gay and straight, we're more alike than we're different. And so sometimes we take these strategies from the heterosexual world of, are we over prioritizing penetration? And do we need more flexibility toward pleasure? Instead of there's one way to the top of the mountain, it's better for us as we age to have a dozen ways to the top of the mountain. And so playing with these eyes, creating several scenarios that we can draw from that are pleasurable for both of us. And there is that part of identity that might need to be flexible. And Dr. Joe Court talks quite a bit about that in his research about being a side and embracing this idea of we don't have to always be a top. We don't always have to be a bottom. We can be sides. We can be flexible as we age and our bodies change. And having a dozen ways to the top of the mountain, I think, is really helpful for any orientation to maintain sexual pleasure throughout their lifespan.
I like if you ever work with me, pleasure and connection becomes quite the commonplace. Pleasure and connection. What is pleasurable, what feels good, and what is connecting to you. And that to go to what Cami's saying, is to find those trails, those other paths to the top of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Look with pleasure and connection, not
Mm-hmm.
where orgasm lands.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean that's a great question, and if the person that asked the question is listening, feel free to follow up.
Yeah, let us know if this was helpful. If you wanted us to go a different direction.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. All right, last question we've got about 9 minutes. I'm a man and I really love my wife, but she wants sex more than me. It happens a lot, and I don't know what's wrong with me. She asked what's wrong with me too. Her friends talk about how much their husbands want sex more than them, and she's stuck with, God, I wish I had that problem. I feel really bad, and I'm not sure what to do to get more desire. So this is a male partner, sounds like in a heterosexual committed relationship, and is the identified low drive partner. And what they're seeing is the society pushing into what norms should be. The female should have less desire typically, and the male should be insatiable almost.
Enter sexual shame. Right? I'm ashamed I don't have a higher desire. I think that's something wrong with me. Her friends think that's something wrong with me. We all think this is something wrong with me.
Yeah. It's such a problem in that way to think that this is, fix me, change me, because even her friends are saying, gosh, like they're saying all these things, and the partner, especially in this situation, the female partner having a higher drive, is like, gosh, I wish I'd be wanted. So in addressing sexual shame, know that first off, I start going with not She Comes First. Holy cow, what's the book?
Come As You Are.
Come As You Are. Thank you. We've said it over and over, and I'm like, why is it gone? I see the whole purse
on the cover. Yeah.
Oh, that 25% of men typically experience lower sexual drive. That whether that is their brakes are more sensitive, that is a part of their sexual experience. They happen to marry a person that has higher sexual drive. It's not unnatural. This is just a part. It's different because what you typically see is a 75-25, with men having more of an accelerator than brakes, and 75% of women having more brakes than not. And so it doesn't, 25% of men and 25% of women having a different experience than a lot of others do. That doesn't make it uncommon. That's 1 in 4.
Yeah, that's not a really rare experience, right? And unfortunately, we don't talk a lot about this, but that's probably the percentage in my practice too. 25%, it's the men who has a desire issue. And, gosh, we're more similar than we are different. And we treat low desire in men the exact same way that we treat low desire in women. It's not a completely different diagnosis. It's not a different treatment. Unfortunately, most of the desire books are marketed in pink, like Come As You Are, and it's the new science for women desire. But guess what? It doesn't have to be a pink book, and it doesn't have to be about women's desire. It's about sexual desire in general. And so you can take any of these books that we love, that we use with women who are distressed about their desire, and use it for men. It's a marketing issue, and that contributes to the shame and the stigma, because it's like, well, that's abnormal. There's no men but that have low desire. But every couple has a discrepancy on most things. There's always one partner who wants the bed made every day and one who really doesn't care. There's always one partner who cares a little bit more about, let's eat out, let's save money. That in every area, there's one partner who would do things a little bit more this way, and another will do it a little bit less this way. And sex is the same. It's not a different category that says, oh my gosh, we are now incompatible. It's like, no, we're going to figure this out the same way we figured out that you want the dishes done every night before you go to bed, and your partner doesn't really care if they wait till morning. It's very much similar. And with male desire, we're going to go biopsychosocial. So first talk to your doctor, get your testosterone checked. Do you have sleep apnea? Untreated sleep apnea for my men in my private practice is a huge contributor of orgasm delay and desire that's declining. So do all that kind of stuff. And then if you get a green light from that, you move into the psychoeducation that's out there about desire in women, about, just like you said, the dual control model with brakes and accelerators, and knowing that there's nothing wrong having these different preferences. I'm incredibly compatible with my husband, but he really likes shellfish. I hate shellfish, right? So Jeff and I've had to figure this out.
Yeah.
And some people are prone to wanting to have sex every other week. Some are wanting it every day. And this is a really common dance that couples who want to be in a lifelong relationship need to navigate. And the science is not different for males than it is for females. And the marketing drives me insane because it contributes to the problem. If all the desire books are in pink, then everybody who isn't female is going to experience shame because they don't feel included in the conversation. Mm-hmm. That was one of those points of sexual shame from one of those slides, is being deliberately excluded.
Yep. You speaking at 100%, Cami. The thought that marketing is marketed towards women don't want sex, men always want sex, they should be ready for it. Prepping people that are deciding to engage in heterosexual relationships, such as marriage, like, get ready, they're going to want sex all the time. And then when the desire is similar, or even if it's similar and one person's up, like you were saying earlier, even in having someone that's exactly in agreement isn't super common on a lot of things. There's always someone that typically is a little bit more in one direction or another direction as well. Mm-hmm. So in these scenarios, when I'm working with these guys, we often work towards the biopsychosocial, but then also identify how we have conversations about what this means and what expectations were there for both partners. Because there's a really good chance that up until becoming sexually active or in this committed relationship, the husband thought, oh, well, this is just what high sex drive may look like. Or, oh no, in the locker room, everyone's talking about this and I just don't have that same thought. Maybe something's wrong with me. They may have had this for a long time, or it may have gone unknown. Mm-hmm. And then these experiences, say for the women, they're just like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. And I'm going to have to try and keep up. And they're rearing and ready to go when they've already got this higher drive. And there's some grief that gets to be discovered within this. How do we work with her grief and his grief? Sometimes
you mourn what you thought you'd have.
Yeah.
And I think you do that in every area if you want a long-term relationship, that we cut our losses as long as it's still good enough sex, still good enough marriage. That's the Barry McCarthy model. It's really unrealistic to expect that you're going to have bliss in all the areas of a relationship long-term. And there is some grieving. And we always have to be maintaining if the loss is still worth the benefit, if we're still getting more together than not. And that, grief definitely with all partners. And then I'll often talk about rebuilding marriage 2.0 with new expectations of, okay, marriage 1.0, in the past, we had all these expectations. We had all this misinformation. We had decided sex meant all these things. And it led us to some gridlock and maybe some crisis and some tension. So what do we want marriage 2.0 to look like? What are the new expectations that are actually accurate? What is our new hopes and dreams that's founded on, medically accurate, best practice type expectations?
I like that aspect of it too, because when we're looking at 2.0, then we get the chance to identify that code or that wording, the subjective thought of, are we sexually compatible? I always get a kick out of what that means because each person's described it differently. And mostly what that means is, A, we're not sexually compatible, or we were so sexually compatible, which means almost to the degree of how much did we have to talk about sex and make an agreement, and how much did it feel like it was just natural. And
Yeah. No
to
effort means success. I'm like, ooh, that's going to change. That will
yep.
not last the decade.
No, it doesn't. It just from the beginning of a relationship, we were so sexually compatible. Well, guess what? After 6 months to 2 years, the honeymoon period phases, which means that there's a change that happens. And then there's going to be things like life changes and the compatibility. I don't like the subjectivity of it, because there's not a way to address what compatibility means. It's just what you
Someone's going to
want.
have prostate enlargement. Someone's going to have MS. Someone's going to pull their back. Someone's going to have
A death in the family, or they're going to have kids, or
yes. And if compatibility means we didn't have to put any effort into it, then that compatibility is going to go out the window as soon as, you start to experience real life. So probably those people who put the effort in right away and say, oh, we've got to talk about it. We've got to be clear. We have to have some conversations and some planning. Those people, even though it might feel incompatible at the beginning, they're going to weather these decades together much better than the people who think compatibility is ease.
Amen. And so within this question, to sum up, if I had to give you an elevator speech of it, it would be start having conversations about planning what is really great for him, what is great for you, what you want to experience, and what he wants to experience, because the shame behind it probably is leaving the both of you in not talking about it and just looking out to decide how wrong your relationship is. Put out the blocks, bring it together. What do you guys want to experience, and what's going to work best for you, from planning, trying to do spontaneity, getting him in the mood, getting you in the mood, and accepting where we're at in the current situation, what other options we have, what are the other trails to the top of the mountain.
What are the other trails? And there's a workbook, Come As You Are. There's a workbook, and it came out. And is it out? I've been waiting for it. It's on my pre-order list. I would just spray paint that baby blue.
Yep.
Or green. And yeah, it's out. It came out this year.
Okay.
So I got to check where it is. But I would get that workbook and see if that gives you and your partner, a new path and get you out of gridlock on this issue.
Yeah, I love that. All right. Well, it's that time. Great questions. I would say that we're gearing up for next week. Cami's going to have something ready for us in the next meeting, right?
Yep. Next week is Cami's mini lecture. And then our last episode in this season will be a sexy book club review. Remind us of our book, Braxton.
Oh, it was called, and it's actually a physical book. I went looking for it on Amazon, or Audible, and it was not available. So you have to get the actual book. And it is called, gosh dang it, You Are Not Broken. Stop shoulding all over your sex life.
That's right. So it's pulling into these themes of shame and shoulds, and that's part of our theme for this season with Sex Explorers. So email us your questions. We got 2 more episodes, and then we're taking a break for the summer. We'll be back in September.
We will. Thank you so much for being here with us, and we will see you in the next episode.